All right, so millionaire coal baron and corporate ghoul from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, is back at it again, tearing into the Build Back Better plan that has already, in its current form, is pretty much dead, all right, at least in my opinion. All of the most popular provisions that were in the bill have been taken out thanks to guys like Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema and the rest of these corporate ghouls. But even in its already dilapidated form, Joe Manchin still has some things that he would like to see get cut from this, and I think this is a perfect example to show you just how corrupt and evil Joe Manchin actually is, because he's completely disingenuous in how he has been going about arguing for cutting all of these programs, right? He says that he cares about inflation and that, he wants to pay for everything that's within these bills, and then he'll turn around and say, no, but I don't want you to tax the rich, I don't want you to tax millionaires, I don't want you to tax billionaires, and, he talks about inflation only when it comes to social spending, never talks about it when it comes to the bloated military budget or tax cuts for the wealthy. So he's a completely disingenuous fraud in this entire negotiation process. He always was from the beginning, and this is a perfect encapsulation of exactly how much of a bullshit artist Joe Manchin actually is. Okay, so here from Common Dreams: inexcusable, Manchin leads charge against Biden's pro-union electric vehicle tax credit. So advocates for both workers' rights and climate policy are condemning Senator Joe Manchin's latest statements, opposing provisions in the Build Back Better Act, the $1.75 trillion social spending and climate action package that has already been substantially weakened due largely to the right-wing Democrats' objections to numerous anti-poverty and environmental measures. And Manchin's most recent opposition is to tax incentives for electric vehicles made by American workers who are represented by unions, right? So that seems like it would be a pretty good thing if we were giving Americans discounted purchasing power for vehicles that are made by unions here in the United States. That seems like, if you're going to be somebody who is pretending to represent average West Virginia constituents, that may be something that you would do. But no, of course, he opposes it. So at an event last week with officials from Toyota, whose auto plant workers have no union representation, the senator told Automotive News that incentivizing the purchase of electric vehicles from the only three auto companies with unions, the US-based Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, would be un-American and wrong. He thinks it would be un-American to give tax credits to people for buying from American-made union workers, okay? That is un-American in Joe Manchin's perspective, apparently. Okay, so I don't really know how much more at surface level you could get in terms of admitting your own corruption and admitting the quiet part out loud. Okay, so he's basically just saying here, a different way of translating this is just saying, well, I really like corporations, and I especially like corporations who exploit their workers. Okay, so having a union, all right, it is a verifiable fact. Having a union in the United States gives you, on average, much better benefits, better pay, etc. Okay, so unions are good for workers. So by Joe Manchin calling the incentives to benefit unions here in the United States, by calling that un-American, what he's saying is that the United States has been completely bought and controlled by the capitalist ownership class, and Joe Manchin is their corporate stooge that runs around protecting their interests. That is what he thinks America should be, okay? And it's pretty clear in terms of what his actual agenda is representing. But he continues here saying that we shouldn't use everyone's tax dollars to pick winners and losers. Manchin told the outlet at the event where Toyota announced that it would be investing $240 million into a non-union West Virginia plant to produce hybrid vehicles. Well, would you look at that? It's almost like all of this is just a blatant conflict of interest that is right out there in the open. Okay, Toyota, who does not have a union, is bringing a $240 million investment to West Virginia. I wonder why Joe Manchin will be trying to represent some of the corporate interests who may be opposed to union auto companies, okay? Again, it's just right out there in the open. This type of corruption, it's not difficult to look for, okay? You don't have to go digging deep and looking into all of their secret motivations, okay? They just lay it out there, out in the open for everybody to see, and yet this is, considered normal in the United States. This is the type of corruption that is baked into the system that everyone just kind of brushes off as if it's normal. It's not fucking normal. But again, the disingenuous arguments here, right? We shouldn't use everyone's tax dollars to pick winners and losers. This coming from the guy who makes hundreds of thousands of dollars from a coal company that he has a stake in, that his son runs, okay, and that gets government subsidies to the coal industry to prop it up, okay? This coming from the same guy right here from The Intercept just a couple weeks ago now. Senator Joe Manchin has been fighting to keep billions in subsidies for fossil fuel industry. So would Joe Manchin call the billions and billions of dollars that we give to the the fossil fuel companies that he is profiting from, would he call that entitlement, as he has previously said? Would he call this, giving them an unfair advantage in the free market system? It's just complete horseshit, okay? None of these motherfuckers, none of these capitalists who say that they believe in the free market actually believe in the free market. None of them do, okay? So he's just a complete liar saying that we shouldn't use everyone's tax dollars to pick and win, to pick winners and losers, okay? If you actually believe that, you would believe in completely getting rid of all of the subsidies to the fossil fuel industry, because guess what? That's unfair to renewable energy, right? Renewable energy, if we gave them the same subsidies that we were giving to the fossil fuel industry, it would be significantly cheaper and more cost effective and safer and better for the American people and the entire world, really, in the long run, okay? So there is no level playing field. That's what I'm trying to get you guys to understand. They just pick and choose which industries they want to come out on top. And then when it comes to equalizing the playing field, or in this case, equalizing the playing field for unionized auto workers, okay, then suddenly there's it's unfair to bring them up to a level playing field, okay? It's just completely disingenuous, completely ridiculous, but this is exactly who Joe Manchin and Joe Biden really are, okay? So just to give you a perspective in terms of what this would have actually done, right, this is a pretty good piece of legislation. So they say Toyota and other foreign-run auto companies have been lobbying against the provision, while United Auto Workers, the UAW, has expressed support. If it's passed as it's written now, the Build Back Better Act would provide purchasers of electric vehicles with a maximum tax credit of $7,500 and would add a $4,500 credit on top of that, starting if the vehicle is manufactured by unionized workers. So that's pretty simple, right? You get a tax credit if you're buying electric vehicles, right? And then on top of that, or if you're buying these types of vehicles, and then on top of that, you get an additional tax credit if you're buying from a unionized workforce. That is great. That is fantastic. We want to support unions. We want to support unionized workforces because it's better for the workers, okay, who work at these companies. The only reason why you would be opposed to something like this is if you were trying to give a leg up to the corporations that do not have union representation, okay? And that's exactly what Joe Manchin is trying to do. He's trying to tip the scales against unions, all right? It's completely despicable. But they continue here saying that a 2020 survey by Ipsos Global showed that consumers would be willing to pay only 10% more for electric vehicles, and the tax credit would bring down the cost of some electric vehicles by $12,000 to around $20,000, which is far below the current average cost of $42,000. So you guys understand why this type of policy would be implemented. And listen, this is, pathetic concerning what the actual issue of climate change, the scale of the problem that we are actually facing. This doesn't go nearly far enough. That doesn't need to be said. Joe Biden, he's not even going far enough. But now we have a millionaire coal baron named Joe Manchin, who doesn't represent the constituents within West Virginia who are massively pro-union overall. And he doesn't represent them. He represents the corporations who are funneling money into his state, okay? And of course, he's going to represent the corporate side of that and not the union side of this entire fight, okay? It just shows you exactly, cutting through the bullshit, who Joe Manchin actually is, right? All of these arguments, whether it's inflation, whether it's about the national debt, okay, whether it's about, the free market and capitalism, it's all disingenuous bullshit. All they are actually trying to do, all of these corrupt motherfuckers in the Senate and the House, all they are trying to do is protect the corporate buddies that funnel money into their states and into their campaigns and, go against the actual agenda that the overwhelming majority of the American people want them to pass.